And I'll recognize the member from Burnaby-Lougheed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It's my pleasure to speak on behalf of Burnaby-Lougheed in support of the motion on the floor calling on the House to, 1, support the creation of an affordable housing plan for British Columbia's first-time home buyers and renters, 2, secure housing of those at risk of homelessness, and 3, eliminate homelessness in our communities. So let's start by looking at some numbers. It's no news that Metro Vancouver is the second least affordable housing market in the world, with the average price of a detached home costing between $800,000 to even over $1 million. So let's forget the dream of white picket fence then. How about a new 2-bedroom apartment? Easily over $400,000. In fact, the one that I saw in Burnaby was going for $500,000 for a new 2-bedroom. That was little over than 600, 700 square feet. So what about the old 2-bedroom condos then? That should be going for a lot cheaper than that. But the catch-22 there is that you'd be looking at still at least about $400 to $600 per month in strata maintenance fees for repairs and updates that these older buildings require, which end up being equivalent to monthly mortgage payment for a property worth $150,000 more. So, Mr. Speaker, the statistics are alarming. Estimated 11,000 British Columbians, and these numbers are underestimated often, and they're homeless, living on streets, under the bridges, in the parks. Tack on another 40,000 people whose homelessness is categorized as hidden, which is living out of their cars, couch surfing from place to place. Many of them are immigrants and vulnerable youth. Then another 66,000 in a paycheck-to-paycheck situation, with a third or more of their income going towards housing and at the risk of eviction or, of course, the rent evictions. Add to that more than 40,000 residents in housing co-ops, over 2,000 of whom are actually in my community of Burnaby-Lougheed. And of course, let's not forget the tens of thousands of students scrambling for affordable residence during their studies, and many seniors on a fixed or limited income not being able to age in their community in place. Even the middle-income families are squeezed out of the market and driven further and further away from their own communities where they grew up in or work at. So in a province of 4.6 million, this means about 1 in 10 British Columbians are without or struggling to put a roof over their head. Over 10% of our population effectively homeless or at high risk of it. So how did we get here? Michael Shapcott, the founding member of the Canadian Homelessness Research Network, states that the housing crisis in our country is tragic, but it's a predictable outcome of 3 decades of political inaction. From ending of the National Housing Program to gaping disconnect between the local wages and skyrocketing cost of living, and of course, from scarcity of affordable rental apartments and accessible homeownership pathway to defunding of co-ops and social housing, many British Columbians are underserved by the existing policies that desperately need strengthening, if not the utter ignorance to the issue by their policymakers. So housing is a fundamental human right under the United Nations codes, and Mr. Speaker, it's a shame that Canada is the only country out of G8 without a national housing strategy, and British Columbia likewise has no plan. So what is the actual impact of foreign investment? How much does the buyer speculation come into the play? There's no quick and simple magic solution to the housing crisis, but what can the 3 levels of government do to positively intervene? Well, Honorable Speaker, we wouldn't know because the Liberal government doesn't even have any real data on this issue for analysis. So with my colleagues on this side of the House highlighting and advocating for various demographic clusters, from those in overheated resource boom towns to those living with challenges, I would like to emphasize the value of co-op housing, providing safe and healthy living spaces to over 14,500 households in BC, approximately 1,000 of which are also in Burnaby-Lougheed in my community. As we know, the federal government's operating agreements for co-ops are expiring this year through 2020, and instead of moving in the right direction, we'll be seeing hundreds of BC families and individuals on limited and fixed income displaced from their homes and communities with no firm action committed from this government. So these are not just our seniors who have earned dignified retirement, but also young families, those of us with disabilities, single parents, and new Canadians. These are my constituents. These are real people with names and faces that I've gotten to know personally at their doorsteps. So, Mr. Speaker, housing is a shared responsibility and too important of an issue to be caught up in a blame game between the levels of government, and I look to this House to work with the Co-op Housing Federation as well as other community and business stakeholders for practical solutions to the housing crunch for the BC families. Thank you.
Thank you, member.